thing, and they don't care.
By the way, we're going to help her fight that at the bottom of the hour. We'll get into that.
But what if that happens to you with the government?
Correct. And what I wrote on the board here is I believe that there are Muslim terrorists that want to kill me, want to kill you, want to end the Western way of life. But I will not support the tracking of email, communication, travel on every single American. I choose to live free, not risk-free. There is no freedom if they're going to minimize and take away all of the risks. Doesn't work that way. When you hear why some of the people, including Michelle Bachmann, she's made a statement of why she says, no, I didn't vote to defund the NSA. She is apparently wanting us to live risk-free. And I agree with Michelle Bachmann on many things, and I agree with Michelle Bachmann on the threat that we face. But we better wake up, America, to the threat that we face from our own government storing and collecting data. Now, the guy who said we should defund the NSA, one of the big supporters in Congress is Justin Amash. And Justin, I don't believe, or Congressman, I don't believe that we have ever met, have we?
I think we've been in a room together, but we haven't really formally met.
Well, what we're going to have to do is we're probably going to have the NSA check our geo-tracking and see if we've ever been in a room together.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You bet. Why, first of all, I want to look at this two ways. It failed, but if I would have suggested that we were going to vote on defunding the NSA at this time in our history, I would have said you would only get 20 people to vote on it in Congress, and they all would have been crackpots. First of all, congratulations on getting 205 congressmen to support this, which is stunning. But why did the Republicans fall away from this?
Well, there was a lot of pushback from leadership, a lot of pushback from former attorney generals. We had Keith Alexander come in. We had a lot of forces against us. They normally wouldn't have had a vote like this ever come to the floor. So we really had to force their hand and get a vote like this. And at the end of the day, we still got a remarkable number of Republicans voting yes, 94 Republicans. You would not have seen anywhere close to that maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay, so all of the crazy people that I think are crazy voted for this as well. The Keith Ellisons of the world, the Charlie Rangel of the world, they all voted. All the real lefties voted for this. Why were they voting for it? Do you know?
Well, they were concerned about the privacy implications of what's going on as well. I think you have a growing alliance in the House between Republicans who are more libertarian-leaning, and that's a lot of the newer members, frankly, who are concerned about a government that is becoming too powerful in all areas of our life. For many years, Republicans were concerned about the economic effects of big government, and now we're starting to be concerned about the civil liberties effects, and that's starting to permeate the party.
Can I ask you, Congressman, for a favor?
Sure.
And please know that I ask you as I'm blaming this on me, not on you. But when there is a vote coming up like this, let us know in advance, because
I don't think anybody had heard of this.
We would have supported this crazy. How long has this been in the works, and how did we miss it?
Well, we knew it was coming up. I tried to get the word out, but for a while, our office and maybe a few other offices were the only ones who were really talking about this. I told my staff maybe a month ago to be ready for the DoD appropriations bill, Department of Defense appropriations bill, because the NSA is funded under the Department of Defense. So we've been preparing, but we didn't want to, show our hand at the time, and we wanted to be ready with good language before we started the whole debate. At the end of the day, we pushed hard to try to get the word out, but a lot of the mainstream media, so-called mainstream media, doesn't cover this.
Okay, well, would you do me a favor? I'm going to put you on hold when we're finished, and I want to make sure that you have my direct email address and everything else. We will cover these things. I am gravely concerned. Do you think it's an overstatement when I say if we would fall into the hands of a dictator, I'm not calling the president a dictator, I'm talking about future, the next president, the president after, with this kind of technology and this kind of power, is it an overstatement to say that if we ever fell into the hands of evil, that this country would make the Nazi regime look like rookies?
Well, the government certainly has more information about us than any other government in history, and that's extremely dangerous and something I'm concerned about. And it's the reason we have a Constitution in place. That's the reason we have the Fourth Amendment. That's the reason we have the entire Bill of Rights, to keep this government from becoming too powerful and overwhelming the people. And yeah, it's not about who's in charge right now. It's about who might take power down the road and what they might do with that power.
They would argue, well, you know what? The problem here is that you're talking about, you know, who down the road. Well, what about the threats that are currently going on? You defund the NSA. How do we even find out any of the bad guys? You're going to get us all killed, Congressman.
Well, that's the tactic they use. I said that last night during the debate. They always resort to fear tactics. But you said it well before I was on that you can't have risk-free liberty. If you're going to live in a free society, there are going to be some risks in your life. And they could have a total police state and eliminate all the risks, but they're going to be tracking you and putting chips on you and putting cameras in your home. And we don't want to get down to that point. So let's protect our freedoms here in this country.
Congressman, we're hearing about some sort of phone record thing that was attached to this amendment that it might make phone records public domain or change their status right now from being private to not so private. Is there any truth to that? Was there something like that in this?
No, nothing connected to my amendment.
Okay. So this was purely those Republicans that we respect so much, and there were quite a few that voted against this. We're voting against it purely based on the fact that they want the NSA to continue what they're doing.
Congressman, I know that you have to run. You're going to be on tonight with me at 5 o'clock. I would like you to answer one question at 5 o'clock, and that is this question. Many people say, what difference does it make if they're recording all my phone calls, nobody's listening to them, they're recording my phone calls and storing them, they're recording my emails and storing them, I'm not doing it wrong. What difference does it make to me? Could you answer that question at 5 o'clock today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us, arm the American people with a great response for that, because that's what everybody always says. Common sense goes out the window. I'm not doing anything wrong. Arm us with the right answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Congressman, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you at 5 o'clock on the Blaze TV. Congressman Justin Amash. Isn't he related? Isn't he related to one of our guys?
Yeah, one of our guys, Justin Amash. His name is.
I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? He's is he like the uncle, or?
I think it's cousins. I want to say they're cousins. But yeah.
Justin is a really good guy.
Yeah, which one? I mean, let's just put it this way: one we like, one we don't. We'll let you decide which one is which.
One will be fired. One will not. Anyway, we'll talk to him at 5 o'clock today with more, and then in just a minute, I want to play the audio from Michelle Bachmann, because I like Michelle, and Michelle knows the threats that we are under, and we are under grave threats right now. But we can't allow this to continue to grow out of control on the face of a threat. We just can't do it. I don't want to see Americans die. I don't want to see another World Trade Center. I think, honestly, another World Trade Center will plunge us into economic despair all over the globe like the world has never seen. So I don't want another World Trade Center. But I also don't want the Constitution trampled and for all of us to live in a surveillance state. It's not the right answer. You can't live free if you demand to live risk-free.
Molly Ross and the Founders Keepers are back in Glenn Beck's new novel, The Eye of Moloch.
Larry Summers. Here's John Instein as our story. Janet Yellen, who had been the favorite to replace Bernanke, is not well known outside Washington. But Princeton economist Alan Blinder, himself a former vice chairman of the Fed, says she's eminently qualified.
Close to unprecedented in a Fed chairman. Even Ben Bernanke, who came in with very nice pre-chairman experience, didn't have a match for what Janet's resume shows.
Yellen was a Fed governor in the 1990s and later chairman of President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors. She ran the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank just before and during the financial crisis, and Blinder says she excelled, recognizing the crisis earlier than most.
I think even a bit earlier than Ben Bernanke, that what was happening in the mortgage market was posing a grave peril to the economy.
Blinder says Yellen also has a collaborative, consensual style, much like the current Fed chairman. Despite Yellen's record, though, in the past week, the blogosphere is crackled with news of the re-emergence of Larry Summers as the leading candidate. The reason given is his relationship with President Obama and his White House economics team. Jared Bernstein was a member of that team during Obama's first term.
It's certainly true that Larry has lots of allies in the White House, and probably more than Janet, in the sense that Larry was a constant presence, of course, with the president ever since the campaign.
Summers was President Obama's top economic advisor and headed the White House National Economic Council. Former Clinton Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin and Obama's former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner are reportedly urging the White House to nominate Summers. But Summers is a controversial figure. Most recently, he was removed from his job as president of Harvard University, where he was accused of making sexist comments about women in math and science professions. Summers is also criticized by some Democratic lawmakers, including Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, for supporting deregulation of the financial services industry in the 1990s.
He was one of the architects of getting rid of the Glass-Steagall bill in the late 90s. He's actually worked to prevent the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, from regulating derivatives. Well, I think both of those, I think, were just huge mistakes.
Harkin has signed a letter to the president urging him to appoint Yellen. The letter is being circulated and, according to the Wall Street Journal, has the signatures of about a third of the Democrats in the Senate. Summers also has a reputation for arrogance and an unwillingness to work collegially with others. Whether or not Summers is the White House favorite, Bernstein says he's sure President Obama did not want this fight to erupt in public just now.
I can't imagine in a week where he's out there trying to get everyone focused on his economic policy that he wants to entertain a fight with Democratic senators over Summers versus Yellen.
A senior White House official said today the president has not made a decision on who will lead the Fed, and no decision is likely until the fall. John Idstey, NPR News, Washington.
Well, joining us to talk about politics now, columnists E.J. Dionne of the Washington Post and the Brookings Institution, and David Brooks of the New York Times. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
And as we just heard, President Obama's been trying this week to focus on economic policy. He hit the road to promote an agenda for strengthening the middle class. Speaker John Boehner promptly dismissed the president's Galesburg, Illinois speech as an Easter egg with no candy in it. E.J., you've written about President Obama's week as a bid for history and one that could prove influential for many years. Doesn't he first have to be influential and successful in a few months?
Well, he has to avoid catastrophe in the next few months, and I think that's part of the purpose of the speech. And indeed, for all the criticisms of the speech, it struck me that in recent days, you've had a lot of Republicans begin to back away from the idea of shutting down the government, of going to the edge on the debt ceiling. Not only people like John McCain, but also people, real conservatives like Senator Richard Burr or Congressman Tom Cole. So I think on the short term, it may do some good. But this is about the long term. I mean, why do we think of progressives especially think of Franklin Roosevelt as a great president? Why do conservatives think of Ronald Reagan as a great president? Well, these are people who changed the terms of the national debate and had their ideas dominate for a long time after they left office. And this speech, I think, was very important because he was making for the case for middle-out economics, basically a broad middle class, spread the wealth around, to use that famous line, as opposed to trickle-down economics. Growing inequality, he said, is not just morally wrong, it's bad economics. So I think it was important that he begin in the final years of his presidency to change some of our assumptions.
David, do you hear some kind of big core idea there in the president's words?
No.
Who's ever been for trickle-down economics, by the way? What I liked about the speech was that we're out of the stupid cyclical debate we had, which was whether we should have more stimulus or less, or austerity. That was never going anywhere. We're back to the real debate, and I congratulate him for that, for getting us into the structural issues. We have these gigantic structural issues: technological change, globalization, widening inequality, males just fleeing the labor force. And so these are big, gigantic problems. My problem with the speech is that, first, the solutions he have are way too small for the problems. The solutions are fine: more infrastructure spending, more education reform, that's fine. But it's not commensurate with the size of the problem. And there's no overarching theory about what we should do about it. I don't really blame the president, because the academics and the experts don't have an overarching theory about what we should do about this confluence of problems either. But I would have liked to have seen a bigger approach, some coherent approach about how we deal with what really are the core problems of the age.
I just disagree on two counts, although I appreciate some of what David said. One is that there isn't an overarching theory here. I think there is an overarching theory here which says there is a legitimate role for government in making a lot of investments that can actually help us grow. Government is not just a drag on the economic system, and also by making some changes in the labor market, like the minimum wage. Second, I think the real test is going to come in the next 8 weeks. The White House promises, and I hope they keep the promise, that it's going to be an 8-week campaign. He's going to lay out a series of ideas in more detail in future speeches, some old and some new. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the new things are.
David?
Yeah, well, I would just say that the problems we have are a confluence of social issues and economic issues. The social issues are collapsing marriage, people born out of wedlock, disintegrating social capital. And to really speak intelligently about this, you can't just talk about economics, you have to talk about social structures. And what he did, the minimum wage, that's fine. As I say, infrastructure, fine. But he's not really getting at what are the core things that really define the moment.
Well, he criticized the notion of the inevitability of inequality. Is he going after a conservative Republican idea?
Well, I do. I think he's absolutely right about that. We have widening social inequality. We have widening income inequality. And Republicans have been very slow to pick up on this and offer their own solutions, by the way. Actually, Rick Santorum is one of the guys. Some of the social conservatives are a little better on it because they do understand the confluence of single parenthood and limited economic opportunity. But you have to speak about it in these complex social ways, and I just don't think you got that.
In the interest of authentic as opposed to fake bipartisanship, I would make the point that I do think that if you care about inequality, you have to care about family and social structure. But if you care about family and social structure, you have to care about inequality, because our inequalities are part of what is harming American families.
One other topic. The House of Representatives voted this week against limiting the gathering of phone data by the National Security Agency. The vote was, and you can take your pick now, either a near win for what Idaho Tea Party Congressman Raul Labrador called the Wingnut Coalition, right-wing Republicans and left-wing Democrats, or an actual win for pro-security, pro-establishment Republicans and Democrats. What happened this week, and what do you guys make?
I'd say it's a moral victory for the wingnuts. And you look at the moment. What are we faced with? We're faced with a rising libertarianism, both on the left and the right. That is the movement that's really rising in power. We saw it in bipartisan way in the Congress today.
Chris Christie says it's dangerous, rising libertarianism.
I agree with that, but it's there.
I don't view it that way. I actually thought this was kind of a wonderful thing. Justin Amish, 33-year-old libertarian. John Conyers, 84-year-old liberal, saying, wait a minute, we have some questions to ask about the NSA. And the vote was as bipartisan as you'll ever find. 94 Republicans and 111 Democrats for it. I don't think this is a vote to make us less secure. I think people have a lot of legitimate questions about the national security state. Great piece in David's paper about this FISA court. All the appointees being Republican. Let's open this debate. This was a vote to keep it open.
Well, I think we do have the debate, but we do have a situation where, according to most of the people who actually know what they're talking about, these programs have saved lives.
David Brooks, DJ John, thanks.
Thank you.
Today, a guilty plea in the case of the Deepwater Horizon explosion in the Gulf of Mexico. A subsidiary of Halliburton has agreed to plead guilty to charges that it destroyed evidence connected to the disaster. The oil rig exploded in 2010, killing 11 workers, launching a massive oil spill. NPR's Jeff Brady tells us more.
Halliburton was BP's cement contractor on the well. Halliburton told investigators that it warned BP to use additional centralizers. These are devices that hold pipes in place in a well. To bolster its case, Halliburton ran 2 computer simulations after the accident, but those simulations showed the number of centralizers didn't make a difference. Despite being told to preserve all evidence, Halliburton deleted the results. Ed Sherman is a law professor at Tulane University.
They destroyed those computerized studies, even though they might have been favorable to BP.
Halliburton declined an interview request, but in a statement, the company says it will plead guilty to 1 misdemeanor count. It agreed to 3 years probation and will pay the maximum fine of $200,000. The company also will make a $55 million contribution to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Still, Sherman says this is a blow to Halliburton's reputation.
It does, of course, leave a bad taste in terms of Halliburton's good faith.
There's still a wide-ranging trial stemming from the Deepwater Horizon accident underway in New Orleans. The first phase has been argued, and a judge will decide how to allocate fault between BP, rig owner Transocean, and Halliburton. During that first phase of the trial, Halliburton said it only recently found cement samples that should have been turned over as evidence earlier. This was nearly 3 years after the accident. Loyola University law professor Blaine Lassen says the judge clearly was not happy about that.
So what you have is a pattern of behavior which seemingly suggests deception by Halliburton in terms of withholding, hiding, or actually destroying evidence that's relevant.
The question now is whether the judge will decide to allocate more fault for the accident to Halliburton because of its behavior. Jeff Rady, NPR News.
Coming up on All Things Considered on WNYC, Bob Mondello reviews the act of killing. Stay tuned.
WNYC support comes from the Lincoln Motor Company, honoring the passion of public radio listeners all across New York City and the tri-state area. More information about the full lineup of Lincoln vehicles is available at Lincoln.com.
On the Brian Laird Show, we're talking about what stinks.
The whole neighborhood is permeated with the smell of sewage, raw sewage. When a guy has too much cologne on.
I cannot stand the roasting nut smell that you smell on the streets.
Callers on the smells they can't get out of their noses this summer. On the next program, another thing New Yorkers like to talk about, rent regulations. That's the Brian Laird Show, weekdays at 10 on WNYC.
A new rule proposed by British Prime Minister David Cameron will require people in the UK to opt in if they want to view pornography. Tonight on The Media Considers whether the plan will work. Also a conversation with BuzzFeed's political editor about publicly naming the woman at the center of the latest Anthony Weiner scandal. That's on The Media this evening at 8 o'clock on 93.9 FM. This evening, weather-wise, clear skies, humid, some areas of fog. The overnight low 69. Partly sunny, humid Saturday, a late-day thunderstorm around the high 82 degrees. Sunday, showers, the high 83. Currently sunny, 82 degrees, 421.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel. Now, a review of a film that our critic calls this year's strangest documentary. It takes as its starting point genocide in Indonesia. Then it adds gangsters, cowboys, dancing girls, men in drag, and splashy musical numbers. Here's Bob Mondello to explain The Act of Killing.
The opening looks like something from a demented Bollywood musical. Costumed girls dancing out of the mouth of a giant fish, then frolicking under a waterfall, as the director barks at them to look happy, happier. Standing with them, also getting soaked, are two men, one slender and dressed as a priest, the other fat in a turquoise satin gown. These two men are notorious Indonesian death squad leaders. They slaughtered countless civilians accused of being communists after a military takeover in 1965. They are not shy about talking about what they've done, but the filmmakers didn't want a Talking Heads documentary, so they offered them a different option to reenact their story in whatever cinematic style they like. They like gangster flicks, westerns, musicals, and this bizarre scene is one such reenactment. The slender man in black is executioner Anwar Congo. The heavyset man gowned in turquoise is paramilitary leader Herman Koto, who in the film is not only enthusiastic about dressing like Carmen Miranda, but also eager to recruit extras for the film's reenactments. He holds auditions in the street, urging people too young to have been alive during the actual atrocities to scream as if their families are being killed.
Growing technology in America where literally government will be allowed to listen to all kinds of conversations without, within a 1 mile radius of where you're standing from different parts from the sky. There's a television program I watch called People of Interest, Persons of Interest. And it's an interesting dynamic. It talks about a man who created a computer that could basically watch everyone, right? And as I watched it, I thought to myself how sometimes reality often mimics some of these television programs because we may not be too far off from that kind of situation. So, when we're talking about COINTELPRO, as we begin to listen to some of these conversations and some of what went on, and the premium starts out with a discussion of the Puerto Rican movement for self-determination, how they became a central part of the FBI's effort to undercut their efforts at Puerto Rican sovereignty. But it also gives you a very good look at Native Americans and African Americans who were probably the most brunt of that kind of attack on the Black Panthers, Fred Hampton, and they'll go through you go listen to the premium, you'll see the array of infiltration, of assassination, of attempting to divide communities, all of that stuff went on. And when you listen to this premium, I also want you to understand, and we're offering that premium here as you listen for $95, this DVD. Understand that we're not talking just about...
Made a couple of... to produce the act of killing. It's a virtually unprecedented social document. Time after time, Oppenheimer highlights jaw-dropping disconnects in Indonesia, killers proud of the fact that they simply made up the charges for which they executed people, thugs comforting children who've been told to cry for a scene but then can't stop, a strangulation shoot interrupted by the call to evening prayers, gangsters laughing about the 14-year-olds they raped. But the disconnects aren't the whole film. For in having these monsters recreate their atrocities for the camera, a space has been opened for feeling. And the filmmakers show you the first consequence of opening that space as one man is hit almost physically by the reality of what he's done, and then walks out without a word. The act of killing, which may leave you speechless too, is one of the most arresting acts of cinema around. I'm Bob Mandela.
A movie's name can help lure an audience into a theater, but what if the name is not enticing? In fact, what if it's boring? Well, there's a thread on Twitter called Duller Movies, and it challenges people to pick a film title and then deflate it. For example,
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Commerce.
Here's another one. A Scandinavian thriller starring a young woman who wants to look tough but still be able to wash off the evidence.
The girl with the stick-on tattoo?
Then there's the duller movie title that transports us to a promised construction project that no one wants to visit.
Back to the Future, site of the Vice Presidential Library.
And how about this? A stirring Steven Spielberg epic of penny pinching.
Saving Private Ryan money on his car insurance.
And coming to theaters near you no time soon, Raymond Chandler's soft-bitten detective who nods off.
The Little Nap.
Then, this summer blockbuster, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's an alloy.
Man of composite metals.
And here's the dull tale of an ancient office saga, starring Mel Gibson speaking Aramaic.
The Last Temptation of Chris from Accounts Receivable.
Something airline passengers long for in an age of cutbacks.
Snacks on a plane.
And to round out our duller movie title suggestions, a story that James Fenimore Cooper forgot to tell.
The Penultimate Mohican.
A roundup of duller movies, a hashtag on Twitter. Let's fade down that dramatic music now for this next item, which could be summed up by the fake film title, Pink Panther Thief Escapes. Yesterday, Milan Poparic, a member of the Pink Panther jewel thief gang, escaped from a Swiss prison. The Bosnian national had been serving time for robbing a jewelry store in 2009, and this was some jailbreak. Accomplices rammed the gates of the prison compound with 2 vehicles. They set up ladders so Poparic and another inmate could climb over the prison wall, and they kept guards at bay with automatic weapons fire. No one was injured. Interpol dubbed this gang of international jewel thieves the Pink Panthers after British police discovered a stolen diamond ring in a jar of face cream. That same thing happened in the classic 1964 comedy. The Pink Panther gang has gotten around. It's believed to be behind thefts in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and the United States of as much as $400 million worth of jewelry. As for the escape of Poparic, if this were a movie, it would be part of a trilogy. He is the 3rd member of the Pink Panthers to have broken out of a Swiss prison in the past several months. This is NPR News.
This is WNYC and WNYC.org. Good afternoon, I'm Amy Eddings. Thanks so much for tuning in. Coming up, San Diego's Mayor, Democrat Bob Filner, says he'll step away from his duties and go into treatment next month.
My failure to respect women and the intimidating contact I engage in at times is inexcusable.
The past several days, numerous women have come forward publicly with allegations of sexual harassment. All the details coming up after news headlines.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from America's Natural Gas. Learn how Los Angeles reduced emissions for its entire bus fleet by switching to natural gas. Thinkaboutit.org. Allstate, committed to helping people live the good life every day. Allstate, good hands for the good life. At allstate.com/good. And the investment firm of Raymond James, wealth management, banking, and capital markets. Learn more at lifewellplanned.com. WNYC receives support from The Book of Mormon. The new musical from the creators of South Park is what 21st century Broadway can be, says Entertainment Weekly. Now playing at the Eugene O'Neill Theater on Broadway. Tickets available at telecharge.com. WNYC is giving away 20 pairs of tickets to a screening of The Artist and the Model, Monday, July 29, 6:30 p.m. at Instituto Cervantes. Enter to win. Click on giveaways at WNYC.org by 11 tonight and follow the instructions.
Every summer, folk musicians and fans gather for 3 days of music at the famed Newport Folk Festival. This year's performers include Iris Dement, Beck, and the Mountain Goats. You can watch live streaming video of the festival now through Sunday on our website, WNYC.org. A rain-free evening tonight, clear skies, some humidity, areas of fog. The overnight low 69 degrees. Saturday begins partly sunny, humid, a late-day thunderstorm, the high 82, and approaching cold front bringing rain on Sunday, the high 83. Sunny skies, pleasant 82 degrees.